I'm going to ask the online audience to take a second poll, and you guys too are free to join. So second poll really talks about what we've been discussing so far. What industry trend worries your company the most? And we have 4 options right here. First is public cloud services. Second is the use of personal devices for work, so i.e. bring your own device kind of adoption, as well as mobile apps, is that a concern? And data mining and analytics. So click away and choose. So moving on to our next question then though, speaking about data mining, when we talk about, apart from the security concerns that the adoption of BOD as well as cloud have brought about, employees today have data that is sitting everywhere, right? It's sitting in your personal devices, it's sitting in some Evernote cloud somewhere in Timbuktu for all we know. Does that complicate a company's ability to gather information and data? Data is the most valuable asset for a company. I think we all know that. Big data is huge, right? It's what someone called Singapore's natural resources data. How then do we then collect data that we know belongs to a company, but sits in different platforms, different data centers, not just in the corporate network? What does that mean for the company now when we look at this current trend? Gary, would you like to maybe take a stab at that?
Okay. Social media. We tend to embrace the social media and try to implement such application into the mode of studies. We have something called the e-portfolio for our undergraduate students. We are actually starting off with a small group of them. By tapping, or no, I shouldn't be using the word tapping, but by looking at what they do in in their profile, e-portfolio, we are able to analyze and correlate the study patterns. Take for example, in the use of business analytics software, we can correlate the future performance or the performance of a particular student based on what are the causes and what are the various the past performance, as well as their participation in online learning. That will give us a good idea of how much or what is the value of social media in addition to all the various platforms that they could have, and contribute to the positive learning outcome of our graduates. Yeah. So in a way, I should say that as a university, we should even embrace all kinds of medias or channels where our students are able to adopt or even adapt to
Yep.
this kind of environment. Yeah.
Okay, so moving to Yuki then, obviously data will be important to you too because it helps you to improve your customer service as well as improve whoever's in your tenants, your retailers. Information off their POS machines, for instance, would help define shopping behaviors and then basically stock up the shops, the inventory, what the customers really want. So are you collecting data for data mining purposes yet? Or I know that you have a business intelligence software that you're using right now. Can you maybe talk about that?
Will you allow me to answer your question in two angles based on what I understood what you were asking? Changi Airport got Terminal 1, Terminal 2, and Terminal 3. We got one more terminal called Terminal H, stands for Terminal Hardware. It means the trust in our employees and our partners to take the interest of the airport and the entire airport community at heart to see to its success. Now, with this basis in mind, let me answer Eileen's first question about whether we trust employee with the data that are given, where the data is in their personal device and so forth. I think there is definitely no way for us to have full visibility where the data are until such time where you want to infringe into private zone. Even the mandatory, if for Singaporean, you will know that just a couple of years ago, MINDEF has always emphasized no camera on mobile phone, but they have relented. The social pressure is so strong that the parents keep complaining, my son go to the army, go to NS, they cannot carry their photo so-called camera phone with them, they are very demoralized. If the soldier is demoralized, they cannot fight. So social pressure is so strong that we cannot go against it. So we cannot beat it, you go with it.
I would just want to add, Yuki was from Ministry of Defense. That's why he knows what's happening in MINDEF. Carry on.
Speaking as a national service.
He's met those parents that want their sons to bring the smartphones into army camps.
So back then, of course, the emphasis on information security is tremendous. Yeah. So back to this question about trusting data in employees. So just to continue the story, a few years ago, we are worried with giving employees access to the internet for fear that they use their productive office hours to surf the internet, to watch YouTube, or those. See, when somebody is sitting behind a computer, he can appear to be very productive. But what is he doing actually? Maybe watching video or whatever, you really don't know. Yeah. So I didn't come to a point whereby you need to trust the employee to find or means that they can be most productive. Doesn't mean that watching video, they're not learning. Maybe they're learning knowledge that can in turn contribute to the company. So I think empowering the employee, giving them the tools that they want, and then have a certain faith and trust in that they are doing for the good of the company is most important. And that will be something that's sustainable. That's really can't control them using their Dropbox, their Evernote, and so forth. And today, with the proliferation of the phone, with LTE and all those, if you do not allow them to access internet from their office computer, they can just simply use their handphone to surf the internet. They ask them, why you always facing your mobile phone? They say, I'm doing texting. I need to text and ask my colleague some information. See, they show you the phone. Yeah. So there's really no way to control.
Kids.
So that's, okay. So that's one part of the question. The other part of the question is about data, which more serious aspect is talking about business data. Some years ago, when the airport was still having some spare capacity to deal with certain uncertainty, we have the luxury to be able to work without very precise information available because we still have capacity. As you know, last year, Changi Airport handles 50 million passengers, and that has really stressed the infrastructure to a great deal. And given such demand on the airport, no longer can we work in the dark and continue to assume that we can still stay at the forefront of the competition. There are many data that we can harness and gather together, and then collectively achieve synergy. Data, for example, that lies with the airlines, the data that stays with the tenants, like Elaine had mentioned, data that stay with our ground handlers. Just take, for example, if we are able to know the aircraft that is just taking off from the departing airport, for example, and we know that how long the aircraft is going to take to reach Changi Airport, we can actually plan in advance to actually let the aircraft park in the closest bay, just speaking, for example. Largely, the algorithm is much more complex than this, but just for example, so that it makes the entire airport planning much more efficient and so forth. We will also be able to differentiate between two types of flight, for example. One where it is carrying lots of transfer passengers. Another one is carrying lots of so-called inbound passengers. Another one is passengers that actually just come to Singapore and they just go out and come to Singapore. The other one is actually they are coming here to catch a connecting flight. So if we can know all this information, we will know which aircraft will be given priority and to make sure that as a whole, the airport community works at the best level of efficiency and outcome. So, and of course, consumer and our sales data, all those are definitely beyond question. That's most important for us to know our customer, know what are the goods they are going for, and what kind of customer is going for what kind of goods. I think beyond question, those are very important data that we're looking after.
Right. So when we look at data then, Nick, when you talk to your customers with different types of environments, and now with the rise of BOD and different cloud services, is that also something that your customers are looking to do where I want to have more business intelligence, I want to do more forecasting, I want to make sure that I know what my customers want in advance, what they want next week. But with all the data sitting in so many different types of platforms, then how do you then construct or architect a plan for your customers that will allow them to pull and gather all this data, regardless of what platform they're from, and make useful forecasts and useful predictions out of it?
The key to that is anonymity. To know who the individuals are without knowing who they actually are.
Right.
So I think this definitely happened in Hong Kong. There was a challenge to personal private data that was actually used for other purposes. Even though it was illegal, technically it was still done. So what has happened is that it swung potentially to another extreme, which is you can't handle any data about anybody that can potentially personally identify them. So the key thing here is a lot of discussions that are going on, and a lot of this is around things like mobile commerce and driving traffic to offline purchases. So the ability to know that I'm walking down the street, I'm passing McDonald's, there's an offer, I get that offer, I walk into McDonald's, I get what I would like at a preferential rate, drives my foot traffic to that retail outlet. The challenge is to know that it's me without knowing who I am.
Right.
And so this key thing about data and making sure it's anonymized and is held within a trusted party that nobody else can actually get access to also drives back to the other challenge, about securing data is about securing your people.
Yep.
So we all have to take a responsibility. The vast majority of us are honest about what we do. We do leave things lying around. That's human nature. You can't, as an institution, know where everything is that everybody's got online or offline or wherever at any one time. However, people have to take a personal responsibility, and that has to be known earlier on. I think this is not just institutional responsibility, which we're talking about personal private data and the use thereof,
Yep.
but also individual responsibility back to employers
Yep.
and other institutions. So I think our social responsibility in the use of social networking is one of the key things that I know is a challenge at a legal level. And we will go, I would imagine, over the next few years from one extreme to another as we try and find that middle ground that says, okay, what is an acceptable norm of privately held data which is anonymous enough not to identify Dane or whoever, but can have him do what a marketing promotion would like him to do.
Yep.
And
So,
that is the prime challenge.
and Dane, are you seeing the same kind of interest in terms of data analytics, big data collection, and what are companies now struggling with in terms of how do they collect the data right now, and what's showing up in terms of stats?
Yeah, so in the survey we just completed, it's across all countries in Asia Pacific actually, using analytics or leveraging data for business benefit was pretty much at the top of the list, more so for the business people than the tech, but it really has broken through now. I think there's a bit of a disservice when we talk about big data too much, because for a lot of companies they're looking at they're trying to understand what's the difference between big data and BI and data warehousing. I think that one of the things that that we see and we suggest is that companies start making use of the data they already have inside their company. So only about maybe 5 to 10% of in-house data is actually used and analyzed properly, and that's a much easier, cheaper, logical place to start, we think. And it's almost like training wheels. You can leverage that and then go out with some of the social media data. I think if you look at the reality of where the business benefit's being drawn, we hear about social media data 90% of the time and internal 10%, but if you look at the business value, it's inverted, right? Yeah. That it's the internal data, as I think you said, a lot of the data at the airport that can be leveraged for it. So we think that it's best to start oftentimes with internal data. Now, some companies are further along and can do some interesting things. At our CIO Summit last year, the CIO of ING Direct talked about a social media implementation they have in Turkey, where they scan social media sites, and apparently in Turkey, people complain a lot about their providers. So they would look at competing banks, mine it, tie it up with their call center, and when someone complained about a competing bank, they would say, we'd love the pleasure of your business. And they said it was very, very successful, and they're rolling it out in other places. So I don't want to suggest that it can't be used for business benefit, but I think that maybe there's a disproportionate focus on social media versus internal.
So we should just not worry about what's outside for the time being, and just worry what's inside.
Well, I think we should, but it's I just feel that there's a lot inside that can generate quicker, cheaper returns for businesses than some of the social media stuff.
And a lot remains untapped, like you mentioned.
It's a huge amount remains untapped.
Yeah. So, Stephen, when we talk to SMBs and companies, then, do they also have that conclusion that data is the missing link that would allow CXOs today to make that bold decision that would turn them into a SMB, into a global company or MNC? Do they recognize data as that important yet?
Oh yes, I think it's not just now. It's always any entrepreneur would understand that in order to have a successful business, you must understand your customer, whether it's an individual or a group, and thus, understanding changes patterns. So data is always there. But I think it is an issue of what data and what do you want to know as well. So I suppose in a SMB, data are collected in a different manner. In many occasions, systems that were implemented by SMB are transactional in nature, to fulfill a invoice, to fulfill a whatever transaction, instead of have a longer vision of how I can use this data in a particular manner. Nevertheless, there are proxy. It's a matter of trying to understand what you can extract from the information that you have. However, doing that is not easy. I would say that most SMB actually goes to the cloud and goes to the public domain for such information. Not so much on who my customer relationship, or what this particular customer has done with me in the last 20 years or so, but general trends. Polling, getting a way to reach the customer that they normally do not have. We see many SMB, in a few years ago, SMBs that has their own websites are a minority. We have only about 30% of SMBs have a website.
How few years ago is that?
That must be about 3-4 years ago.
Okay.
Not too long ago.
Okay.
Yeah. Today, most SMBs have Facebook page. They don't have a website,
But they have a Facebook.
Yeah, so it's totally different. Why? It's much easier to do a Facebook page as compared to go to your IT, hire somebody, put up a website, design your. Facebook is it's okay, and that allows them to collect information too.
Insights. Yeah.
Insights. Call up their friends, like, and then connect through their networks. That is also a way to collect information, their product, their announcement, and even who's buying what. So many are doing that, and not very big companies too. 3-man, 5-man, 20-man people. Most of them have something that has already out there and running.
Yeah. So, and like you mentioned, SMBs usually don't really have an IT.
Yes, and that's the beauty, because they can put up a Facebook page without any IT people. In fact, I must say, it's not just SMB. Actually, even a large company. A large company, you can sometimes view them as a combination of many smaller companies, if you were to look at each department. And I've noticed that many single department of a large company has put up their own individual website, or rather Facebook page, for a particular product, particular launch, particular event. Just like that.
Right.
No need. No IT. Isn't that great?
So Gary, how many Facebook pages does SIM University have?
I think SIMS, we maintain one Facebook page. But coming back to the point that is data the missing link. Actually, if we look at data from an internal perspective, most companies will tend to under-analyze. I believe, like what Dane mentioned, you have about 10 to 20% of data being analyzed. But the other part is the external information that you need, and somehow you need to triangulate this kind of external, internal information in order to make some sound decision. An example could be before you even launch a new product or a new program, how do you know that your external competitors are in the midst of doing such projects or such rolling out such products? So, but the challenge here is to extract the external information and enable that triangulation. I feel that the CIO plays a crucial role in this as well, because I mean, Chief Information Officer, you are supposed to be conversant in analyzing that piece of information and present the information to the management for decision making.
Right.
So I think, but besides that, the CIO tend to, focus in technology area, but the business aspect is crucial as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so at this point, I'm gonna pull up the results if possible, and open the floor up to Q&A. So we have 4 lovely microphone bearers, roaming the ballroom. So if you have any questions, just raise your hand, and one pretty woman or man will come running toward you with a microphone. Do we have any takers while my trusty console managers pull up the poll results? Anyone? Anyone? Yeah.
Hi, I was wondering if you could talk a bit about how your company's security policies are changing as a result of, I guess, all the BYOD and social activation, and if you monitor, I mean, it's empowering employees, and I guess an example is the recent Singapore haze and the should we work from home or should we come into the office kind of, how did you enable that, and how do you enable that when not everyone has VPN access and all that kind of stuff?
Maybe Yuki, let's talk about the airport. What happened during the haze and what happens?
I think we look at two angles. One, I think, sorry if I may I rephrase your question. You're asking, number one, let's say Changi Airport Group as a company, how to respond to contingency, and second is how the airport as a whole, as an operating house, respond to contingency. I think Changi Airport Group as a company, like many other companies, we have our own business continuity planning in place. We also have a disaster recovery plan. We have also identified who are the core group, who are in the backup group, for example, and then we make sure that those people can have alternate location to work from. Haze is one example, but we're also mindful about pandemic, like the flu, influenza, and so forth. These are always continuously in our planning and thinking. Changi Airport has the luxury of 3 terminals, which allow us to move around. If there is an outbreak in a certain location, let's say in our office, we can have alternate working place within the airport, and we can move around. We also provide remote access from home so that our employees can continue to work. Yeah. So that is generally what we're looking at, CAG as a company. For the airport, I think not so much from the IT perspective, but we do have contingency response plan to the so-called events, haze, for example. And I think 1 or 2 years ago, we have this volcanic ash incident where many aircraft cannot fly over the European sky, and quite a number of passengers got stranded in the Changi Airport. So we do have plans to actually respond to such contingencies. Just a joke, yeah. IT is good. You give our passenger IT is good. Too much IT become detrimental. Yeah. Because give them IT, they can continue to work, continue to be productive and be connected. But then they can continue to complain. They can complain that, oh, damn, the airport is so boring, I got stranded over here, damn. Yeah, so, okay, it's a joke. So, yeah.
Laugh. Yeah, so, but I think airport's a little different because you guys are essential services. You can't really shut down for a lot of reasons, I guess. So, but in terms of a business environment that's more typical, Stephen, when you look at your companies and SMBs, in terms of BC, SMBs, do they think about that at all? Like BC plans and Plan B and all that?
They do.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll take the question in 2 ways.
Yeah.
I think maybe first is the security that was asked, and I'll come back to that. I suppose whether it's a small company or a big company, actually, the issues of security and risk doesn't start with IT. It starts with your governance structure. You must have policies first. What is considered risky? What is not? What is your responsibility? Obviously, that must be a framework that you must first establish in order to define what is acceptable practice or not. And obviously, some of them are determined by regulation as well. The second part is that IT cannot be responsible for all security issues. I totally agree with Nick. It is the responsibility of not just the institutions, but also the individual staff. No different from any other security. No different from you should come to work early, or you should come to work on time, or you cannot bash up your colleagues, or you cannot,
we can't?
So, it's like that. So there must be, it's a HR issue, right?
Yeah.
Thou shalt take care of your data properly. And this is the responsibility of you being a staff of so-and-so, that you should do it this way. And you must understand that this is your personal data because you have invited somebody for lunch, and this is a company data, and thus the company data must be treated in a particular way. So this is the rule. The facility for you to perform that, that is the IT's responsibility, to make sure that there is proper avenues for you to execute what the policies have dictated. And I suppose this is what we all do. And if an employee is conscious about what his responsibility is, and he can be fired if he doesn't comply, then he performs accordingly. And an excuse to say that because IT didn't put a firewall, and thus it is all right for me to be scotch-free, is totally ridiculous. So it's not the responsibility of IT only. IT only facilitate that particular process. And I suppose perhaps in our context and our environment today, that maybe is not well too structured properly. That means that I've seen, we recently have a law, right, that about Personal Data Protection Act, and the law have 2 points. One is you must have a policy. Second, you must appoint somebody's ass to hang if he doesn't do his job. So yeah, so it comes in both sides. Now, then when it comes to business continuity, it's still the same thing. SMBs are, I suppose, even more critical in ensuring that their commitments to their customers are delivered correctly. Because in most occasions, they can be replaced pretty quickly. You cannot replace Changi Airport that easily, but you certainly can replace a SMB like that. So it is even more important. However, the business continuity do not necessarily have to be done in an IT manner.
Right.
Fortunately, the amount of data that an SMB holds is much smaller. So sometimes the brain works, so you can remember. You have paper, because you have data stored in many different places, it also means that if my hard disk crash, I can still find relevant information from my colleague's hard disk or somewhere in the cloud and somewhere. So even if I do not have the full piece of information, I have sufficient to link up what I'm supposed to deliver or what I'm supposed to do, and then piece the message together. So it is not that bad, a scenario where you have data kept in multiple places. That, by definition, in fact, builds a BC framework.
SMBs.
Yeah, you can, because they are sitting in many different places as well. And I suppose in most SMB, there is no disaster recovery center. Some of them don't even do backup that well, but because it's duplicated and you have the comfort that, information is everywhere, that kind of gives you the, I suppose the strategy is that I'll sit everywhere, and if something happens, I'll panic, but I know that I can overcome it with enough time and enough effort. Yes.
Great. Do you have any other questions from the floor? In the meantime, we'll flash the results of the second poll. Any questions? Anyone? Anyone? The next one to ask a question gets to shake Dane's hand later.
No, you'll definitely not get any questions.
Have coffee. Corner? Oh, right here. Oh, hang on, sir. We'll get a pretty lady coming right up to you soon. There you go.
Thank you. And this question actually is for Dane. With regard to the social media concept, and you mentioned Turkey and the banking industry going after competitors, was there a monetary model, or were they able to actually accumulate how much quantify that type of process?
The benefit was.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a great question. He gave some data. I don't have it with me at the moment in terms of the impact, but there was another example I heard on big data, which was interesting, that did have examples. So this was here in Singapore. It was Citibank, and they talked about the mortgage business. And in the mortgage business, the name of the game is usually you try to offer the lowest rates, right? So everybody competes to offer the lowest rates. And what they found through big data was that there is a portion of the market that doesn't choose based on the lowest rate. So they found through analytics, they were able to find the constituents which wouldn't select based on that and increase the margin for that business in Singapore from, and as a profitable business, from like 20% to 30%. And he cited that as an example to get business buy-in. So his suggestion to IT was find, and I think this is very true, there's so much data out there. Part of the question is, what do you pick, right? What do you pick and what benefit does it bring? And he said, if you really want to get the management team to buy in, find something, prove it, show the numbers, and then you've got them hooked. But until you do that, it just seems a bit too nebulous and abstract. So that was one example where the financial impact is what they used to get more support for it. Yeah, thanks.
Great. Any more questions? Yep.
Hi, just picking up on a comment that Nick made about telecom providers moving into being ICT infrastructure and applications providers. I'd just like to get the opinion of the panel of what they think is the comfort factor for SMEs to start using telco providers as the source of their business applications.
Since you named Nick, I'm going to name Nick as well.
Oh, so I'll answer my own question. I think it comes down to the trust element of your trust. Telecom providers are trusted with the infrastructure for communication provision, i.e. carrying information from point A to point B. The challenge has always been that information has gone away. You know, a voice telephone call, technically I call somebody, the information is carried, is then disposed of when I hang up. I think what is happening next is that information is potentially stored or recorded from a data perspective, and therefore is the provider trusted well enough to provide security for me to be able to outsource that to them. So number one is the security and the trust. And going back to the previous question, it's VPNs with everything. And so the ability to provide a dynamically allocated VPN to any device, anywhere in real time is very, very key for encryption and access. We do that for our own email now. It's still hosted in-house, but we have VPNs with everything. In my pocket right now is a dynamic VPN doing my email to my corporate office. So I think that level of security that CIOs are used to in-house has to be reproduced and replicated within the infrastructure of telecom providers. Now, telecom providers are trusted to carry telephone calls, provide corporate access, so it kind of follows that if you can provide the same level of security and integrity, that it follows that you'll be trusted again. It's also a need. However, in the event that it doesn't, then you are gone. That trust breaks down very quickly. And so the need of all providers to be able to provide, as if it were my colleague to my right, providing in-house, the telecom providers must be able to provide it off-site. And that is the challenge, and I do see a lot of that coming in. So that security, integrity, the trust element, and to be there when it goes wrong, to make sure it's fixed. People may not know that telephone networks are not always online, but you would never know that because when you pick up the phone, there's a dial tone, but they are forever breaking down and being repaired non-stop. And that is the level of service that we need to provide, not just for SMBs, but for multinationals and every other major corporation.
That question actually reminds me,
just on the telcos, if you don't mind, for the last 15 or 20 years, I've been hearing that is the next great IT channel, and you see a lot of the telcos trying to do it, and maybe some small gains, but it hasn't happened. And I think the fundamental reason is that the customer experience they provide, the confidence and happiness we have with our telcos. If you're a business, you don't accept some of the things that telcos are comfortable providing to mass market in terms of response rates and things of that sort. So I think there has been that promise for a long time, but the mindset and approach and customer orientation of telcos has caused some issues. So for me, that's one key area that is going to be a key part of that.
That actually reminds me also back 10 years ago when we were still young, Dane. A lot of talk about telcos becoming banks because they have the customer data, they have that relationship with the customers. Why not let them be banks and give us money and banking services? But that never happened, right? So that means, Gary, I mean, if like Nick mentioned, if the telco has integrity, trust, and the whole gamut, would you put all your 51 software and all your email and everything onto a telco or a data center provider as well?
From the perspective of cost equalization, yes, I think probably that will be a good choice. But many of us think that moving from from in-house to being a remotely hosted kind of services is a one-way ticket. But we have to take into consideration the repatriation of data, bringing back all this information and the cost involved in future. Because we can never be sure that such services will be there forever. And the cost of transference and repatriation may be quite significant in time to come.
Correct.
Yeah.
Stephen, yes.
Okay. I think we talked about telco being a provider. But actually, they are already provider today, and they may not be telcos. Google is a very big provider, and they provide a lot of stuff. So I suppose it's not so much whether is it a telco providing it or whether a public provider is available. And I agree with what Gary had mentioned. My company started in moving mainframes to mini computers, and for the longest time, nobody believes that mainframe can be replaced. How can it be true? Well, inevitably the economics works, and it drives that way. It takes a little bit of time. There are some issues like securities and so on. Issues means that there's business opportunity. The guy understands that you cannot put your data on my site remotely because there is not enough VPN. The industry will solve that problem. And with that, it will deliver a new class of service. And that's it. My take of it is that it is really inevitable that services must move into when we were in mainframes, people argued and says, it must be crazy. This toy called PC is now my terminal. 3270, I press it on, the light comes on. It's great, no problem. But nevertheless, it all happens. So we may be at this infancy stage of cloud, but inevitably, I see that it must happen. Why? Because I'm a user now. It makes a lot of sense. There are limitations, but the benefits really outweighs the limitations. And I know the limitations are not issues that are so big that it cannot happen. Within our chamber's members, a few years ago, we talked a lot about cloud. And one of the biggest objections about going cloud is because the cloud provider is Singtel. It belongs to the government. They will know my accounts and then they will report it to IRAS. Yeah, I mean, so it's not about people stealing your data.
Live TV here, Stephen. Live
TV. Oh, yes, but that has the good news is that it has generally been elevated. It has all been eliminated. People who do not have that consideration now. Yep. The consideration now is like what Nick has said. The responsibility for customer data and so on. So I must say that today, all the two telcos are working quite closely with Chamber, delivering, providing applications to the small businesses, and in every sense, I feel that the will of the two telcos are very high. The willingness to invest, the willingness to continue, and the view that it is strategic to their survival is very high. So with that will and the muscle to invest, frankly, I think that it is inevitable that this phenomena must happen. It's just a matter of sooner or later.
Right.
Which thus challenges the issue of CIO. and IT departments, which comes back to where Yuki was saying. I understand what Yuki was saying. He says that, well, the system will make sure that the car park boom comes out and all these things. Well, in a building, the lifts needs to run, the toilet needs to be clean, the walkway needs to be clean as well. These are not done by full-time internal department staff. They are all outsourced as well. And more people, including telcos, are selling managed services to make sure that your mission-critical IT infrastructure is taken over, is done by them. And they have the financial means to warrant you, which means that they mitigate your risk because they are able to mitigate your risk financially. So my take of it is that, well, it must go that way. If IT infrastructure is a facility to do work, no different from a building, a toilet, a lift, sooner or later, somebody is going to come in and say that using my bigger organization, my more specific technology, and my better trained people, I can do a job better than your in-house staff. And your in-house staff should really look at what your business is about, which I think will disrupt our CIO's role and IT department's role.
Yep. Okay, so we're running out of time a little bit, so we're going to close out with the final question. And of course, the question is staring at you in the face. I'm going to split it into two and ask the panelists, starting from Yuki, because, well, he's nervous again. Instead of just asking what's really driving your ICT environment, I'm going to ask you in two prompts. What's driving your ICT in a good way? And what's driving your ICT environment mad? So let's go with the good first. What's the good thing that's driving your ICT environment right now?
I think lots of new technologies driving the way, coming down the road. Lots of interesting toys to play. One of the key business principle for CAG is to succeed with our partners, and we always look at partners who can help us to grow the airport business. So just reeling a little bit back to the question earlier, whether we are looking at telco as an enterprise service provider. I think for CAG, we always look at the level playing field. And most important is that we ask the company, what business are you in? When we are talking about the product, and especially differentiating between telco service and enterprise service, it's just a commodity. It's almost nearing towards the point of homogeneous. So the differentiation between whether is it telco or enterprise service, in fact, is very thin. So really, we're asking the company, what business are you in? And not only business, we're talking about, are they in the airport business? Business, we're talking about service. Are they in the service industry? Do they have a service mindset? Do they have an interest to actually partake in the interest of the airport to grow? And then collectively, we succeed as a team. So I think there's something that's very, very interesting. And we definitely have lots of partners who are very supportive and collaborative and really want to see Changi succeed. And I think that is something that is driving IT in a very good way. So what is driving in mad? I think it's a hard question, yeah. I think it is really diverse demand from the passenger, for example. And sometimes there are priorities that we need to deal with due to resource constraint. Of course, we want to provide the best IT facilities for passengers, for partners, but sometimes there are things to prioritize. Something to go first, something to take some time to deliver. Yeah, so I think this is something that we are working very hard to manage and to make sure that while dealing with all these challenges, we still maintain the best service level for our passengers.
Okay, cool. For Damien, looking at the market then, what do you think is a good thing that's driving ICT for companies here in Asia?
I think for SMEs, I think the public cloud, I think Stephen mentioned, is a huge opportunity. So if you look, before Salesforce.com, if a small company wanted a CRM system and they had satellite offices, they couldn't get one, right? It would just be prohibitively expensive. And now you can set it up in a day and pay nothing. And I think across application categories and solutions, you can go with a very light CapEx model and the skill set. As Stephen said, you don't have an IT department and all these people to pay for, so it's a much leaner, lighter model. And across industries, we wrote a book at Forrester called Digital Disruption, which looks at how startups are completely overtaking established players in a market because they don't have that legacy, both cultural, organizationally, and technologically, and they can accept these technologies more quickly and completely turn established industries upside down. So I think, leveraging public cloud services, I think that's what's going best, especially for SMBs.
And what's the one trend that's driving them crazy?
The one trend driving them crazy, I think, is I think skills are a big issue, but that's why I think public cloud is kind of the solution. So I think it's hard to find people who, a lot of the way that we've trained technology people to date has been on bits and bytes and programming and things of that sort, and the types of skills we need to really benefit from technology in the future are different from that. An example commonly given are the types of people who are data scientists, who are quantitative geniuses, very smart people. Sometimes applying that to business benefits and outcomes is a hard thing to do. So I think finding people who can marry technology and business outcome and think strategically, I think that's one of the biggest challenges.
Right.
Yeah.
So Stephen, for your SMB folks.
I think the good stuff, right? That's what you meant.
Good first, yeah.
Good first, yeah. Say about 7 or 8 years ago when we do surveys to SMB, the general questions was, what can IT deliver to my business? It's doubtful whether it is relevant to a business or not. I think today the question is no longer a concern. In fact, it's the other way around now. Now the SMBs want solutions, and in fact the demand is high, whether it is because of their business or their current IT savviness. Many SMBs are family business. So, second generations and newer management comes in. So there is a great desire and great need or vision to not only catch up, but also surpass. Many of the SMB do not believe in the laptop era anymore. They want to jump straight into mobile. No need to have laptop. It's irrelevant, and the vision is like that. So I would say that the positive part is that the willingness to adopt the visions and the want to do it is very, very high today. What is bad is that they are constantly disappointed by what is available in the market. I'm speaking mainly in the Singapore context.
Yep.
Our IT industry providers is not a SMB-friendly environment. IT solution providers do not sell to SMB. You almost have to go out and get your DIY yourself, discover whatever it is, and obviously it is tedious, and that is challenging because even when we talk to telcos, the business case to sell to SMB in terms of the cost of acquiring customer is extremely high. It's very difficult to sell to SMB, do a demo, visit them, just to get a $6 a month order. There's a problem. Critical mass and so on, it is a problem. And that, I suppose, it is the one that is still challenging, and we don't think that there is going to be a very quick and easy answer to that.
They're not meeting in terms of cost, budget, or in terms of the types of product. Is it streamlined, not streamlined for SMBs, for instance?
SMB has lots of great ideas. They really want to go out and buy something because their business has these needs. They say, great, let me have a great CRM software. And they say, well, I want to have a CRM software. They call up their most friendly IT vendor. The IT vendor wants to sell them something which is $200,000. They're not going to sell him something that's $6 a month. And for him to come and talk to me, the SMB, so that he can convince me to buy advise me to buy a $6 a month software, he thinks wasting his, it's not doing his company a favor. So there is a gap between the provider and what the SMB really needs.
Yep.
The SMB still needs to be serviced. They still want to know they still need to be able to put their hands on, this is what I'm buying, and yeah, it is a good product. That, I think, has not matured enough. A lot of the products in the markets are still fairly unknown, very little evidence that they are good. And of course, all the concerns that we mentioned here, security, governance, continuity, they are concerns. So they want to go in, they want to know whether it is good or not. But these, you almost have to self-discover everything. And come on, this is SMB. If he has 1 hour, he'll be out there selling and doing some of his, his operation rather than doing such research. So this gap continue to widen, in fact.
Yep.
And, well,
it's being filled by the public cloud players, basically, right?
yes, but the public cloud players,
It's self-service too.
yeah, it's not doing a good enough job. Let me put it this way. It's, if I call up the telcos or the public cloud provider and says, well, I want the CRM, whether it is anybody, they will tell me, you go choose. When you have selected one and you want to buy, come and call me.
Right.
I'm not advising you. And they are also unable to do so.
Right.
There's a structure in that. So I think there's still a gap in public provider being able to serve beyond bandwidth, beyond infrastructure. And there's a great need by SMB on the other end.
Yep.
So we need
It
some
takes a while
time.
to mature.
We need some time to
Right.
do that.
Okay. Gary?
Okay, I think the underlying demand from the customers and the users of IT both contributed to the ICT environment in a paradoxical manner, both positive and negative. I mean, fundamentally, if there is an increase or a change in variety of IT services, first, I think there will be a demand for IT professional, and that's where we get to keep our job. I believe we agree. Secondly, it keeps us on our toe, so that when the people providing such services, they get to upgrade. So there is a sustainability in the long run. Yeah. Looking at the negative part, I think the variety of such devices, in fact, the demand from varied demand from the users is also causing the nightmare. How do you really manage the infrastructure? How do you provide 50 types of applications to meet each and every person's needs? That is really keeping us awake at night.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Nick, when you're talking to your customers, what are they telling you then?
Well, the good thing is innovation. The challenge is innovation. So I think the key to the future of, whether you're a small, medium enterprise, you're a multinational, is to know that you can provide existing services to your customer base in a solid and integral fashion that is demanded by them. However, people read the news, people see new innovation, people want to see, okay, well, I want the same thing but faster, cheaper, more effectively. And that innovation, and actually embracing that and bringing that in is the challenge. So, whether you can get a Salesforce.com CRM system up and running as fast in Singapore or Malaysia as you could do so in West Coast America is the challenge. And whether that is provided by Salesforce.com or some local phone company is what needs to be seen, so you can go somewhere, i.e., not everybody's going to be able to have a Gary on their books to actually answer all the questions, but you can have expertise. So then it comes back down to the education. How do you get to understand it, get to innovate, get to really think through? I think some of the people that support some of our systems are like half the age of the systems they support. That just kind of shows you that from an engineering perspective, and as an engineer by training, if it didn't break, you don't fix it. So that which continues to work, you will keep. The challenge is it gets a bit more difficult to maintain it over time. So at what point do you make the break? At what point do you change and really innovate? So that second challenge on innovation is it time to let go and move on? And what is the cost benefit of doing that?
Great.
So innovation and then innovation.
Great, thanks a lot. And thanks everyone for joining us, as well as online audience. You will be able to access the full video on demand in about 3 days, Monday, Tuesday, on our site, and catch our site too for our coverage of the event. And the panelists will be around, so stick around and have a chat. And Stephen will probably get a lot of phone calls from vendors very soon, offering very big discounts.
That would be good.
Great. Thanks a lot, everyone, for your time.
A lot of advice.
Thank you.